Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the film The Wild Robot. All right, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for The Wild Robot?
Sure. After a shipwreck, an intelligent robot called Roz is stranded on an uninhabited island. To survive the harsh environment, Roz bonds with the island's animals and cares for an orphaned baby goose.
All right. So let's dive in with our Movies and Us one-sentence summaries. Sarah, what is yours for The Wild Robot?
Mine is, life's about more than just completing tasks.
Yes, this is hitting home for us specifically as well.
Yes. It's an important message for us task-oriented individuals.
True. This is for us. We are feeling very seen and very attacked at the same time. My one-sentence summary is a story of an Enneagram 3-wing 2 and cute animals.
Nice. So yeah, that got you written all over it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, well, let's dive in. We're going to share our high-level thoughts about The Wild Robot, and then we are going to give a spoiler and then dive really fully right in. So, Sarah, I'm curious how The Wild Robot landed for you. How did you feel about this film?
Yeah, I feel pretty mixed about this film.
Ooh, yeah. Juicy.
I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, me too.
This film is absolutely gorgeous, and that the animation and the sheer talent and skill that it took to create this incredibly gorgeous movie, like that alone makes this movie worth watching. I think I struggled with the story a lot, and I think I just kept thinking about our world today and the rise of AI and people befriending AI to some disastrous results and like things like that. And I'm like, should we be making a robot this like really great hero with all of these characteristics that we want little kids to follow when AI is kind of like taking over everything right now? I don't know. So like, I had my little tinfoil hat on the whole time while watching this film, it felt like, because I was just like, I'm having a hard time connecting with this film just because of the moment that we are living in. But it's absolutely gorgeous, and everything is doing what it needs to do to get you all in the feels. Everything's very effective. I am the problem. So yeah, I struggled with this one, even though I love how this looks. It's absolutely gorgeous. I've watched this movie now twice, and both times I have just been wowed by how gorgeous this is. So yeah.
Okay.
Love the visuals. Don't so much love the story.
We are going to have such an interesting conversation today. I'm
Yeah.
so excited. I'm so excited. Well, I'm glad to share that you have a fellow I am the problem person with you.
Oh, I'm so relieved.
In this train car, barreling down the tracks, we are the problem, but maybe for different reasons, which I think is going to be interesting to unpack and talk a little bit about together. Everything about this movie should work for me. Like the Enneagram 3-wing 2 thing is great. All of the commentary on technology is like really interesting to me, especially working in tech and the rise of AI, as you're talking about. It's a story of like a parent-child relationship and family, and all of that usually hits me right in the center of my heart and pulls on all my heartstrings. And I watched this movie just doing some deep self-reflection on why I seem to not have a soul, and this movie really didn't work for me at all. I was clearly aware of moments where I was supposed to be feeling a lot of things, and I just wasn't. And so there's a lot in here that I think from a story perspective, I'm really excited to talk about, and the way that this movie ends is also interesting to me, and I have some issues with. So there's a lot here for us to discuss around ways we might rewrite this differently or would have liked to see something different. But yeah, this didn't work for me at all. I had a really hard time getting through it, actually, which usually doesn't happen in a film like this. You know what I mean? It's usually a great time, a fun adventure, some beautiful visuals, some really clever moments. And I just was like struggling to get through this movie. So that was a fascinating experience because that was surprising to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was curious because I know part of the reason why I struggled to connect with this film is simply because Roz is a robot and I viewed her through the AI lens. And so I was like, I'm just going to resist feeling a connection to this AI robot just because of who I am as a person. And so I was curious because like I'm very resistant to like generative AI and all of that. And if the little AI summary pops up in Google, like I get irrationally angry. And you are much more, you work in tech, you're involved in these things, you're much more willing to use AI and all of that. So I was very curious to see if that might be like a differentiator in our experience with this film, but it sounded like that's not it. I also struggled to get through this. I kept pushing the button on my remote every, I don't know, 40 minutes or so. It was like every third of the film. I was like, okay, got it. Act 1 is done. Now we're in Act 2. We are at the right point. Okay, we're done with Act 2. Now we're entering Act 3. Like I was pacing myself through the film because I was just like, okay, are we almost there? But I was also actively resisting empathizing with this robot just because I'm cantankerous and my heart did not want to empathize with the robot. I empathized with all the animals though. I wanted to be friends with all of them because I was raised by Disney movies that, you know, you befriend all the animals. So there is that.
Yes. I think just a story about all of the animals would have been a far more interesting story to me.
Honestly, though.
Right? I don't know. There's a lot in here with the concept of technology and how it's viewed in the world of the animals that I think is really interesting and prompted some interesting thoughts that I think we can talk a little bit about at some point. But yeah, on the whole, I really, Sarah, have never found a movie this hard to get through in a long time. Which I was like, it was just notable. You know what I mean? I think I started this movie at least 2 or 3 times. I would watch a couple of minutes of it and found my thoughts wandering, and I'd have to go back to like restart the movie all over again because I was like, I didn't pay attention. I need to pay attention to what's happening in this movie. And similarly to you, kept checking to see how much longer there was left. So yeah, there's a lot from a script perspective that I think it didn't land for me. But it's fascinating because this movie is getting a lot of love. And so that's interesting because it's clearly resonating very deeply with a lot of people. And so I was really trying to figure out what was disconnected for me. You have done a great job identifying what that thing is, which is there's a whole AI on the screen that we're supposed to root for. And you're like, I don't really know if I want to root for AI. I think for me, the character building for literally nearly all of the characters in this movie just wasn't strong for any of them. And so I think that was really hard for me to get engaged with following these characters and caring about the relationship. I think it was not full. It was not packed with feeling like these were full characters that I could root for. So different reasons, but conclusion is the same, I guess, for both of us on how we feel about this movie.
Yeah, I was also very painfully aware of the fact that, like, I am not a parent. And I feel like there's a lot in here that if you are a parent, you would probably resonate with. And I think maybe if you're not a parent, some of those things you can like intellectually understand and maybe empathize with to a degree, but it might not hit you as hard. So I do wonder because the reviews that I've read of this are usually written by parents that really, really loved it. So I am curious, and I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of non-parents who have also written reviews of this, but the ones that I read that were very, very praiseworthy, they have children. And so I do wonder if there's that deeper emotional connection that maybe parents are bringing to this that I did not.
Yeah.
And then all of the other reasons why I was just resisting this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see that because there's a lot of the story is like dependent on that relationship, and perhaps it's easier for parents with young kids to buy into quickly those dynamics. I think I think about other films that are about parent-child relationships, like Finding Nemo comes to mind immediately, of like, I am not a parent, but that one really just gets you in all of your feels, right? And so perhaps the leap it takes and the way that the film is able to quickly grab a ton of diverse audiences into it is different and a little less effective for like maybe the non-parents. And maybe parents are immediately like, oh my gosh, yes, I know that dynamic so intimately. I experienced that literally this morning. And now they're fully bought into Roz and following her journey. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this movie.
I don't know either. Yeah, we are not the people to be reviewing this film, I don't think.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Here we are. Here we are indeed. Okay, well, let's give a spoiler alert. So, if you haven't seen The Wild Robot, it is now available to stream on Peacock, and we recommend checking it out before continuing to listen to the rest of our conversation. So, Sarah, where shall we go next?
So, while I was watching, I have a rewrite to submit to bring to the table. I think this movie should have ended either with, oh God, what is his name? Bright Bill?
Bright Bill.
I keep wanting to call him Buckbeak, right? the Griffith from Harry Potter. I keep wanting to call him that, and that is not his name.
Nope.
I am just this poor little goose. I've watched this movie twice, and I still can't get his name. Anyway, I think this movie either should have ended with all of the geese flying off, and it's this really like triumphant, bittersweet moment, or like we could even do the like just after, like when he gets back and like Roz knows that he's safe, and like they can have like a little like moment of like they just like see each other and know and they're good, and then the movie should end there. Like, I did not want that third act. I think the first two acts could have been made maybe into an entire movie, and it could have just been about this robot ending up where she wasn't supposed to be and then helping this bird accomplish its goal. And that's it.
Yeah.
That was one kind of prevailing thought that I had this go around.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there is so much plot in this movie, and it all gets diluted. And, you know, the story of this robot that has a lot of differences with Bright Bill / Buckbeak. I'm not helping your confusion in your brain at all. I'm so sorry.
Hey, it's okay. I don't know why Bright Bill just does not like.
Yes, I agree.
It doesn't work for me. And then my mind, my mind goes weird places with it. That is just not his name in my brain. I'm so sorry. I've derailed us. Please continue your thought.
No, I completely agree, because Buckbeak sounds so cute. You know, it's cute. It's like got that like boyish young youthful adolescent type of vibe to it. So it's fitting for what we're seeing on the screen. I understand where your brain made that connection. But instead his name is Bright Bill, which just sounds like an old middle-aged man goose, you know? We're going on a tangent. The story of Roz raising Bright Bill and then allowing Bright Bill to go and be sent off as she has equipped him to be a part of his community. That is a whole beautiful story that would have gotten us in all the feels. And that is a simple, scoped, narrow enough story. And then the film would have time to dive into those little moments and emotional moments to like actually allow me as a viewer, I won't speak for everybody else, to really buy into this connection between the two of them. I think the problem with this movie is I didn't become emotionally invested in their relationship. Like cognitively, I am aware that like she has raised him and they have a deep bond. But I didn't feel that. Again, maybe I'm the problem and I need to take a leap of faith with this movie, but I just didn't feel it. I probably needed more time or more moments of seeing them stumble together and then make up together and give me a sweet montage or something, to be able to really soak in that for a period of time. And then we dive into the next piece. Then there's the whole movie that is also in this one movie around the use of technology and about Roz's feeling of displacement and her finding and redefining her purpose. And that is a whole movie in itself, in which Roz is the main character. And I think the problem with this film is that both Bright Bill and Roz are going on these big transformational journeys, but they either aren't interwoven enough for them to like really push both storylines well enough, or they're two separate storylines, and therefore I don't have enough time to become emotionally invested in either of those, let alone all of the plight of the other animals' emotional storylines of like buying into and accepting Roz, and then them fighting and coming together as a community and fighting for a common purpose. Like, that's a whole nother movie, And so I think there's too many things happening in this movie, and I feel invested in none of them. We also spend way too much time, I think, in the beginning of this movie, in the opening 30 minutes, really, spending time with just Roz bumbling around and kind of messing up and breaking relationship with all of these like potential new animal friends. I think we spend so much time there too that by the time we get to the relationship between Roz and Bright Bill, like I'm already kind of the trust in the film has already been eroded a little bit. So everything after that is harder. I get that it's important that is a pivotal moment because it's when the future rift between the two of them is formed, that event of her accidentally killing his family and all that kind of stuff. But that needs to happen way faster and then give us a whole bit of Bright Bill growing up and that emotional connection with the relationship. So I think this is a classic case of there's probably 3 to 4 movies stuffed in this one, and therefore now none of them are effective in each of their arcs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely felt that, especially once, Bright Bill. I'm going to get this. By the end of this movie, I will know this goose's name. Once Bright Bill is off with his geese friends and they're flying around, you really feel that. It feels as though the movie, it has such purpose while, Roz is trying to teach him how to be a goose and she doesn't know how to be a goose. That I feel like has such momentum to it. And then by the time we reach our goal and he's gone, then the movie kind of falls into this, like, what are we doing? Which in a way makes sense because that's what Roz is feeling in that moment. She doesn't have a task anymore, so what does she do? But then I feel like we almost stay in that kind of sense of listlessness for a little while. And then eventually it's like, okay, now we're going to save all the animals, get through winter, all of that business. But I don't know, by that transition felt so awkward to me and almost felt like kind of like the movie almost became directionless after Bright Bill went away. I don't know if that was intentional because I would imagine that parents do feel like that when they become empty nesters and all of that. But I don't know. I struggled to make that leap from task 1 of getting Bright Bill off with his friends and then task 2 trying to save all the animals. That transition didn't really work super well for me.
And I think maybe that's also why, again, there's too much in here, because Roz's role in this movie and her journey is, one, like you mentioned, task 1, getting Bright Bill off and flying and all that kind of stuff. But then she has a whole nother task that seems to come out of nowhere, and I don't really know why she particularly feels is the character to be this person, but she's the one that then rallies all of the animals to become community together. And like, those two tasks aren't related. I think it would have been more effective maybe had they been intertwined in some way, or because the community came together to help Bright Bill learn how to fly, they saw the power of coming together and caring for each other and being invested in each other. And then that is now sparking them to come together, which then now the after effect of them coming together is they can fight against the universal dynamic system that's attacking their community together. Like all of those need to be, I think, more connected. And I can infer and fill in the blanks for how that might be connected, but I don't think the film does that. So Roz bringing the animals together is like a completely separate storyline and goal from her whole first half of the film, which is raising this young child, Goose, and allowing him to be set free. And I don't know, maybe that connection is clear to other people, but I think for the film to have had that forward momentum, we needed to move from like that one focus area to the next focus area quickly enough, and then also to have them actually impact each other, you know?
I really like that idea of having like the community come together to help Bright Bill, and then the after effects are actually a community. And it seems like the film almost wants to get there. Like it's her and Fink and Thunderbolt, the really cool owl, voiced by Ving Rhames, like so cool. So like, and even the opossum mom, you know, so there's a little bit of that in there, but I think you're right. If they had really leaned into that and had that be a little bit more robust, then it would make sense how we get to the point of, hey, you know what? We all worked together to help this goose. Why don't we work together and help each other get through this really, really harsh winter? That would have then made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. And then, so maybe that harsh winter becomes their first intentional application of being community, right? Like they discover being community through helping Bright Bill. Now they've applied it intentionally in this first instance together and like really rallied together. Maybe we see them like managing their inventory of food or helping each other build their homes or burrows or whatnot that they need for hibernation. And then now that they have become community, then their final like final boss sequence is universal dynamics is now attacking them. And because they have had all of these reps and instances of really doing community together, when the big bad foe comes, we now know how to work together. And that would have felt so satisfying to see them go from being completely disconnected to putting in the time and energy and trust building to become community. And now they can really apply it in like the biggest stakes possible for the community, which is like they're being attacked, right? And that would have been a whole satisfying progression. But we don't really get that payoff. I think we have to talk about the ending at some point because I'm really confused a little bit by the way that this film ends. But I would have loved to see that progression. And it all stems from kind of this small micro story of these two characters of Roz and Bright Bill and the things that they care about and their little lives. But then the far-reaching impact of that becomes, no, this whole community has come together because of that by the end. And they have fought for their freedom, their independence, their safety together. Like that micro to big macro stakes trajectory as the film opens up more, I think would have made this much better.
And I think in this scenario, this version of this movie that we are currently writing, that might have helped with my hesitation for investment in this film, because in our scenario, Roz isn't the hero. So in our scenario, Roz isn't the hero. She is the guide. And the community, they are the heroes who are fighting for themselves. And I think that's a healthier picture of what technology should be and how we can use AI. Like, I feel like our version would have been okay for me, because I don't think that we should make technology the hero. Technology is not the savior, but how we use it, we can either use it to help or to harm. And I feel like our version shows a way that technology can be used to help people come together, advocate for themselves, make their world a better place. Like all good things that we would want, but it's the animals, the characters, they would be the hero, not the robot.
I love that. That's a great point, actually, which is that it changes the dynamic of who we're rooting for, because we, in this version of our fake old multiverse version of this wild robot in another universe that we're writing, the community is the hero. And my gosh, do we need that at a time like this, right? Of all these disparate species, different community members that are all so different. They look different, their strengths are different because they're all different animal species. Being able to use their strengths together, that is a beautiful message that we need here in the year of 2025. And you're right, we could see how Roz becomes one of the members of the community. And in a lot of ways, she becomes one of the species. And she's got strengths too that are so different. She can calculate and measure and forecast with the team together. And that is her strength to contribute. The bear can be strong and lift all of the food supply. And then the birds can, I don't know, there's so many cool ways to showcase how the way that each species is wired contributes in just the way that they can. And I think that it's a detail that is already woven into this movie, and I don't think they took advantage of it, but Fink and Roz talk a lot about, like, that's their programming when they're introducing the animals. Like, oh, the beaver is hollowing out a tree because that's their programming. They were made and created and wired to do that, and they do it so well. And so that larger moot point of we are all using our programming in our unique ways that then come together for a collective better, that's a beautiful story. And then Roz, like you mentioned, becomes just one of the many species of creatures in this world that is using her programming in the ways that she knows how to and can contribute uniquely. I like this version of our story. This is
great. And I think, I think to your point, like, the more and more the films that I'm really enjoying are, and I mean, obviously we're talking about a kids movie, but I'm enjoying seeing when a group of people, just regular Joes, just normal, regular people without any kind of like special powers or anything, like, are able to come together and do something extraordinary. And I feel like this could be a kid version of that. You can just come with your skills and join with the other members of the community. You don't need to be good at everything. Hello, Enneagram 3s. You can instead partner with others who have different strengths than you, and you can accomplish more together than you would be able to do separate. And that is such an important lesson for adults and kids to learn. I think that would have been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really like our movie.
I do too. Yeah. And if the story, which maybe takes a little bit of a different bent, is, again, still focused on this idea of coming together in community, then that can also be the spark, the environment that allows Roz to grow and evolve and adapt. So at the beginning of the film, she is so focused on tasks and constantly, like, to a annoying degree, asking everyone like what the task is that they need help with, right? And it's often misguided. It causes more challenges and issues for the community because she's kind of bumbling, like her intentions are so good, but they're executed in the methodology as maybe needs refinement. And so when she becomes integrated as part of the community, that is when she can also begin to learn to listen and to watch and understand what people need. And maybe that's her rewiring and her reprogramming, is learning to observe and to empathize with the people around her and be aware that there's all these other dynamics that are around her. Because I think at the beginning of the film, that's part of her initial baseline state, is she's not even aware of and looking at anybody else's needs. She's just asking them, kind of barreling forward in that. And so her learning to observe and empathize and watch first and then fill in the needs where she is most able to add value could be a part of her journey of growth too. And then learning to lead with the feeling of connection, the feeling of satisfaction that she gets from being able to help others becomes something that she can also learn. But that growth then gets ushered in because she is in community and not just alone, isolated, and barreling forward in this like tunnel vision mission that she has, which is where she starts the film off in with that first too long 30-minute segment. But that would have been an also fascinating point and dynamic that the film could showcase in our version of this movie, which is the way that community helps you like grow and draws out different sides of you and refines how you think about your purpose and how you fit in together with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we are dealing with so many people feeling lonely and isolated, and that includes both adults and kids.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what a great message to remind people that number one, community is important. Number two, you can find community and you can learn and grow together. And that's, I think when we are in community and we find that belonging, that is when we do our best growing. And this film really could showcase that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And what's cool is that those ingredients are already in the movie. I think that's the neat part of this. You know, like the dynamic of community building often starts with like individual relationships, and then those set of relationships grow a little bit, and then they begin to extend beyond just that small microcosm at first. But really in this film, the first community that Roz and Bright Bill build is with the opossum family. And the way that that family and this family become community together at first is really cool. That's one of my favorite sequences in this film, is seeing Opossum Mom kind of teach and guide Roz how to help raise Bright Bill. And so that sequence, I think, could have been a little bit longer. That's where we could have gotten a lot more of those emotional connection moments with Roz and Bright Bill as they both are figuring this like parent-child family thing out together, and watch them stumble and then get back up again and figure it out. And maybe they fight and they bicker, but Opossum Mom family is like right there alongside them, walking that out with them. And then you add to their number. Then we begin to add some of the other folks. So the owl, or I forget who it is, but the very wise bird that comes in and helps teach, right? Now we're adding new people into this community as it grows. And I feel like this film's a little bit wandering. Like we get so many characters with the animals so quickly, but we never get to see them actually like together. I think Roz and Bright Bill interact with a lot of them individually, but we don't get to see that collective until pretty much the very end. And so getting to feel that feeling of like, oh, this is our big group of friends, and we're adding to their number, and people are interacting amongst themselves and not just like bi-directionally hub and spoke model, I think would have also helped me buy into the ending of this film when they're all together. I think I was also emotionally less engaged with that ending of the collective of all of them together, because I'm like, I've never seen any of you together, but I also haven't seen you really like fight that much against each other too. You know what I mean? So you also being together isn't as satisfying, because maybe I needed to see more conflict between all of y'all at the beginning, out of quote unquote the survival that they're programmed to have. Let's see maybe more of that so that we get the payoff of seeing that debunked by the end too.
Mm-hmm. And again, there's some of that in here too. We see little bits of, Fink trying to eat, Bright Bill, that is his name, and like using Roz to like get what he wants. And we see little glimmers of that, but I think you're right that there are too many stories here. And so we can't go too deeply into any of them. But as you said, we must talk about the ending. So, Jen, what are your thoughts on the ending of this film? The current ending of Wild Robot, not our imagined version of this film.
Oh man, I hated the ending. I think it's probably ushering like a more nuanced perspective of technology, and I think it maybe is allowing for us to have a more balanced view of technology, or at least inviting us to ponder that a little bit more. But I'm also like, this is a kids movie, and Universal Dynamics has clearly been a toxic manipulative organization. So I cannot stomach the concept that Roz is just willingly like re-enslaved by them by the end of the movie. So I wanted the uprising, okay? Like maybe that says something more about me too, but I'm like, clearly Universal Dynamics has done a lot of terrible things and has destroyed the island and whatnot. So I don't know. It felt like a little bit of a letdown at the ending to just see Roz picking fruit in a greenhouse and just giving her life back to the organization that has tried to control her in a really manipulative way. So that didn't sit right with me. I did not appreciate that ending. So that was the biggest thing that I had problems with. I don't know necessarily if like the whole we're gonna have an uprising against the technology company is like maybe not the best idea. That's kind of what I wanted, but like I'm like, if you're gonna paint Universal Dynamics to be this negative, like I want to see the uprising. I want to take them out. But I think that maybe that if they want to do a more nuanced perspective around technology in our current age, there's a whole different way that the Universal Dynamics organization should have been portrayed throughout the entire film as well to allow for that nuance. So that is my feeling about the ending is like it's kind of a letdown. I was expecting a bigger climax and didn't get that. And then the concept of Roz going back to be working for this organization willingly, I don't agree with. Like, I don't think Roz would do that. What are your thoughts about the ending?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was more focused on the animals.
Oh.
As I am one to do. And I like that Roz doesn't end up on the island just because I was not rooting for Roz. I was rooting for the animals.
Yep.
And again, this is going to say a lot more about me than about the film. But I just had such mistrust in Universal Dynamics that I was like, now that they've found this island, what's going to stop them from completely destroying it and building another utopia here? Like, what's going to stop this company from taking this over and killing more animals and destroying more of the environment? So that's where my brain went.
Well, we got to see them
I was
out.
like, honestly, like, I was like, we're just supposed to think that this evil corporation just came, took its piece of property after destroying this island, and then is just going to keep doing its evil somewhere else? Like,
right?
Really?
Right?
But it is a children's movie. Like, that's what I had to keep reminding myself of. But I was really stuck on that. It's like, I don't believe that these animals are safe. I think that Roz exposed them to danger, and because she didn't go right away, then their island is destroyed. They will probably be destroyed because of this company, and now she's back in their hands anyway. So like, why didn't you just give yourself over?
Yeah.
Like, why Roz, the reason why they came and destroyed the island is because of you. Like, I was so upset.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me.
No, if you like extrapolate this out a little bit, and maybe other people are interpreting this differently. This is just how we're interpreting. When you have uncovered a manipulative, oppressive force, organization, group of people in power that clearly also are like very powerful because they have an insane amount of technology that they control, the concept of this like female character choosing to like essentially sacrifice herself to protect the animals, to go back to the oppressive force and just spend what seems to be suggested the like rest of her days just enslaved there and continuing to like be a part of that system, I don't agree with. And the other problem with her willingly going back is that it's kind of positioned to be like she knows that if she were to stay on the island, the Universal Dynamics organization would come after her and it would be a danger to the animals. And so she is like choosing to go back as a like sacrifice. And I'm like, something about this female character doing that and giving her entire life over to this out of the desire to protect, which is like really, I don't know. And in some dimensions, like, oh, it's really beautiful. But also I'm like, no, we don't cooperate and continue to yield to oppressive, manipulative organizations that are wielding power with a force that is like clearly with no restraints. And I think the problem is too that we just watched the scene right beforehand of, I think the Fontra is the name of the octopus looking machine, but like we've just seen the way that this organization is run. It's one thing if Universal Dynamics is kind of hand wavy to be like, we don't really know that much about them. They're kind of a mystery and we're not sure if they're good or bad. That's kind of gray. It is very clear that Universal Dynamics is not a healthy, altruistic organization. So just to Roz to yield and to sacrifice herself in that way, I was not happy about it.
Yeah. And I don't know. In my brain, I was like, and you're sacrificing yourself for nothing.
Yeah.
Because this isn't
You're like,
going to
"This is also
solve
not
the
effective."
problem. So maybe, right? Like, you didn't solve the problem. They're probably still going to keep coming. So maybe I'm just too cynical for this movie. But I'm like, this is not an organization to be trusted. This is not a good company. And so why are we supposed to think that everything's going to be okay for the animals?
Yeah.
Except for that it's a kid's movie. And so there's that. But I don't know. I think there was maybe a better way of maybe accomplishing this. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I think that's also the interesting aspect of this is like, what are we teaching kids about how we respond to the things that we uncover about the worlds that we're in? You know, like this film has showcased a character that is complacent and choosing to yield to the system. And I think that it's healthier for us to have characters that respond to uncovering unhealthy organizations, to find ways to stand up against them. It doesn't have to look like a big fight sequence. Okay, this is a children's movie and it's very wholesome. We don't want to do that. Like maybe in a Star Wars movie, like we have the Rebel Alliance that's fighting against the big bad system. But there's got to be some other way that these animals are banding together with Roz to find a new place, stand up in any way that they can, or problem solve, or try and help allow Roz to free the other Rozes, the other machines, or help reprogram them in some way to be altruistic or to break free from their oppressive organizations. You know, like there's something different that I think could have been really much more healthy to depict. Because all the other machines are also like ignorantly being controlled by Universal Dynamics. Like, let's free them too, you know?
Okay, so we have the Wild Robot 1, where Roz helps the animals come together, find community, help each other survive. Then in the Wild Robot 2, Roz leaves the island for some reason. Maybe she like gets a message from home or whatever, like, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know, like whatever. And then she leaves the island to go help the other robots. And then we get that kind of subversive, like, okay, we're going to help free them. Maybe we can get some like cameos from some of the animals, whatever. But I feel like we have just outlined two very different movies. Both could be appropriate in this universe and could be made to be child friendly, I'm sure. I'm sure there's a way. But I like both of these ideas.
I love that. And then I think what would also be interesting too is let's bring all the freed robots back and have a picture of this animal robot society where they respect each other, like they value each other. The robot is no longer an other. The robot is one of the animal species, you know, that has all these different strengths and programming and skill sets that they're contributing to society. Because I think that's another interesting dynamic that's a part of the current Wild Robot that we have not rewritten is the way that the animals respond immediately to Roz as other and as a monster. You know, this is like they treat Roz like she's the Terminator. And there's a whole bit that I actually really loved in this movie where Fink is talking about like essentially the power of narrative. He starts off with like storytelling as lying at Jason and tells a story of Bright Bill's mama to get Bright Bill to go to sleep, and you see that it's used to almost used to manipulate, and then we get to see later on how this Fink, the same character, is able to rewrite the narrative about Roz to the animals when they're all huddled in that community together to say, you have all believed the narrative about Roz being the monster. However, the real narrative is that Roz has been taking care of you, protecting you. She has so good intention, blah, blah, blah. And so he's helping rewrite the narrative and rewrite the truth about Roz to the animal community. And then we see that there's a reconciliation there. And so I think that would have been another really fascinating dynamic, is to see the way that this creature that has been perceived as an other, as a monster, and ostracized from the animal community, we now see robots and animals kind of living together harmoniously by the end. And maybe you see the dissent from some of the animals, or maybe the bears are like, no, we don't accept, or something. There's got to be some pushback, some struggle, but then we finally get to see that it is earned when they are able to live in peace together. But it's a relational dynamic that's very much a part of this movie, but not, I guess, fully explored as much as it could have been as well. So that's another interesting story arc tidbit that I think would have been really interesting to explore. And again, very relevant for our society today as well.
I think this is one of those examples where you're much more into the robots than I am, because I'm like, nope.
We don't want them to be
I am here for the beginning of this movie where all the animals are like, go away, robot. We don't want you. I was like, yeah, I feel that deeply in my soul. But you know what? In my heart, I am just the elderly person who's yelling at kids to get off my lawn. So that really informs how I feel about technology. So
you want the story where the robots are banished from the community because they become evil and have much power. Not even like intentionally, but they just, by their programming, start to glitch, and it gets a little crazy.
Here's the thing. I've watched too many sci-fi films where the robots rise up and kill everybody. And so I'm like, I don't know about this. It's a real cute robot, got the big ol' eyes, so you're supposed to like love it, and it's supposed to be cute, and you're supposed to connect with it. But I'm like, that could be a killing machine. Like, we don't know. It has all kinds of gadgets. We don't know what's going on with that. But that's just my personal problem.
I did empathize with the animals.
It's cute, though.
I did empathize with the animals when they're
give me the animals all day.
When they're running away at the beginning of the film, because I'm like, yeah, all the animals have probably watched a Terminator. You know, you see this like big giant machine. You run for your life.
Yeah. I would be running too. I wouldn't want that thing trying to like ask me for a task every 10 seconds. No, I don't want that. I can do the tasks. Thank you.
Yeah. That was another thing actually that I think was an interesting part of, again, the way that these characters are written, is in the beginning of this film, I wasn't sure how we were supposed to feel about Roz. I found her to be kind of frustrating and difficult to love at the beginning of the movie. And I was just thinking a lot about WALL-E and how much of that was a contrast of like, we go on this whole story with WALL-E, but it's because we spend the first portion of that movie just so enthralled with WALL-E as a character and just so endeared by him. And I wasn't sure if that was the goal of the opening sequence of this movie, but I was not endeared by Roz. I actually found her to be frustrating when she's constantly barreling through this world, asking everyone for a task. I'm like, oh my gosh. One, I understand that approach to life as an Enneagram 3 wing 2. I get it, but you're doing too much, you know? And so I think that was a little bit complicated. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to root for this character or not. You definitely were not rooting for her from the very beginning, but she is also kind of cute and just well-intentioned, but just misguided. And so the ambiguousness of that, I think, made it also challenging to understand who we were supposed to be following. WALL-E, very clear. Like, we are on WALL-E's side till the end, you know? And this one, not sure, a little muddled.
So yeah, in the beginning, she's a fish out of water. She doesn't belong. Her programming has taught her to like respond a certain way, and she's not in that context. And so it is kind of funny to watch her try and navigate this, but to your earlier point, I think that just goes on for too long. And it's like, okay, we get the point. She is a fish out of water. She doesn't know how to do these things. And then she finally gets into my task is Brightville. And then the movie starts moving at a pace. So I almost wonder if there's a way that it could have maybe better integrated some of those funny fish out of water moments into that larger story, so that there is more room for some of that emotional work that you needed to better connect with this film.
Yeah, that's so true. I think those comedic bits could have been used a little bit more effectively. We kind of have no context for those comedic bits at the beginning. We're just like bumbling around with this character, but maybe some of those comedic bits would have really helped form that connection and showcasing the relationship building. Like they use two birds with one stone. Oh, that's a bad phrase for this movie. What's the phrase? The elegant version that I hear people use is like feeding two birds with one stone. Let's do that. Yeah, it's the variation. It's the sweet, nurturing, altruistic version.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, they could have accomplished many things at once by having the comedic bits, but also using all of those comedic bits to help build a relationship and showcase the bonds that are slowly forming between this robot and this bird. So, well, I think we have done a great job rewriting this entire movie. Any other last key points that you want to hit before we wrap?
I just want to give a shout out to Longneck, who is the old goose, voiced by Bill Nighy, of course. And I just loved him. I was a big fan of Longneck. I wanted to spend some more time with his wise and yet also sassy self. So just shout out to him. Shout out to Bill Nighy for doing
there are so many
just a great job as this goof.
Animals that we just didn't get enough time with. I think that a movie just with the animals would have been already so fun and so beautiful with all of the visuals. So.
Mm-hmm. And Paddler, like, honestly, the whole thing could be rewritten with him as the protagonist. It's basically Rudolph, but just with Paddler as the one, and then they need his help, and then he saves the day, and then we can all come together and understand we have different strengths, all that jazz. But with Paddler as the protagonist, that would have been hilarious. I would have loved that, because he is also so sassy and doesn't like other people, and that is right up my alley.
He makes his bigger than everybody else of himself. Yeah. He's like, yeah, you know that significance is expressed artistically through scale. I'm like, true. Yes. The fact that you know that is just tickles my brain. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about The Wild Robot or any rewrite ideas that you might have for this movie that you would have wanted to see. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. We will be back very soon to discuss the film Nickel Boys. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you all again very soon.